I'm going to be reviewing this model. This is a new Compustar system. It's model cs601s. This is what Compustar calls their LT series. This is their entry-level product. Now this is going to basically pertain to anybody who has a system. It does not have a whole lot of requirements except for extended range, remote start with a single button fob, so that way you don't have something big and, you know, cumbersome carry around on your keychain. And this system also offers, as well as built-in remote start with extended range and 2 transmitters, it also has a functionality of also adding a keyless entry system with the same little 1-button transmitter, believe it or not. So it's pretty neat, very unique. And these here are still these are the 1BAM R remotes, but for 2013, which is when we're recording this now, this is December 2013, this is going to be the 2014 model as well. So the new model on these remotes is the 1BR-AM. So just for anybody who's referencing the older system like the cs601s or something like that, the remotes are not going to be backwards compatible. Now for 2013-2014, the brain, which is currently the CM600S, these ones here, you can update the firmware via the internet, and that's a new feature. The details are on Compustar.com. I'm not going to get too far into it, but that's a pretty noteworthy feature, as well as they are RS-232 compatible with Fortin brand iData-Link bypasses. I apologize, not iData-Link, Fortin. 4-pin data-to-data, plug right in right here. Over here I have a Fortin Evo All, which is made by the same company, Compustar. There you go. There's your connections. So activation input, power and ground right there. One single plug to connect that side to the car, and that's how the bypass works on these modules. Like most Compustar systems, the main primary ignition and power harness is pretty standard across the whole board, except since the system is not an alarm, you'll notice that there's the absence of a relay here. So if you wanted to do anti-grind with the system, you'd have to add that on separately. There is a connection on the module, which I'll tell you about later how it's done. But for right here, you got your powers, your parking lights, your ground, you have your ignition, accessory, starter output, and you also have the selectable extra wire, which you can use for a second starter, second accessory, or a second ignition right in here without having to adding any additional relays. So that's really cool right there. Your antenna, pretty straightforward. These things have been pretty straightforward and common across the LT series or entry-level stuff for years now. They're still utilizing the 4-pin plug on the antenna side with the little cover, and of course the other 4-pin, which goes to the alarm brain, like so, right next to the RS-232 plug, which I just illustrated to you before. Right next to that we have your regular remote start harness, which is going to be basically where all your most of your common connections are going to be going at. And I'll break those down to you real quick what we have in here. You have a negative light output, but of course you have a fused heavy gauge flashing light output right there, so that's just an auxiliary extra output, which is good to have. You also have a second accessory output, so if you needed another one on top of the selectable one in this harness, you have another one there, which is great. Rearm output, which is great for tying into factory alarm systems that can become annoying. Some of the cars out there really could use that. Also has a horn output, so if you wanted to audibly as well as visually see that the vehicle is on the remote start, you have the option to do that. You have your regular brake input, so when you get into the car, turn your key on. Once you hit the brake, the remote start powers down and the car stays running on the key, of course. That's what that's for. Your trigger starter input, with that what you could use for an optional output starter. So if you wanted to tie it into another remote based system, or if you want to use this as a slave remote start and add it to another alarm, if that's the route you're going, if you're swapping this into another application in another car, another install, that's what you would use that for. Over here you have another negative starter output, status output, which we use for a bypass, which if you're not utilizing the RS-232 bypass port, that's what you're going to use that for. It's like a ground when running to activate an optional bypass module. Hood pin input, which is included. Lots of cable. There's your pin switch, so if you have your hood open, it will shut the remote start down for safety purposes. That's included as well. And you have your alternator attack sensing input wire, which is always good. But these systems are set at the factory 2 ways. One, the transmitters are already pre-programmed, so that's a nice feature. Also, the tach, it's already set for voltage sensing, so when you start your vehicle for the first time, it's actually going to recognize the voltage on your car. Say if it's resting at 11.5 volts, the car starts and runs up to about 13 volts. It'll automatically sense that, look for that, so that way when a remote start, it's telling itself, okay, the voltage is higher, the alternator is going, we know the car is running, and it's a nice, smooth, easy installation. And that's the way it's supposed to work. And Compustars are good for that. They've always worked very well. They're very reliable systems. Just because it's simple and it's inexpensive does not have to mean that it has to be a poor performing system. Now, as far as option programming, it does have a limited amount of option program settings, but again, the person who needs a system does not need a whole lot of that kind of stuff anyway. But Compustar does go ahead and give it to you anyway. Now, you have two choices. You can use the OP500, which is a professional type of tool, which is a programmer, which you plug right into the module and program with a little cell phone looking box. It looks like a little phone, and you would program it that way. But for the average guy who's just going to buy this and program it with what he has available to himself, you're going to use it through the remote controls and through the supplied products. The settings that you can change are the lock settings, the pulse duration of them, your crank time, alternating sensing, or voltage sensing, which I already told you is already set. You could do priority lock and unlocking, so that way when you hit lock, they all lock. You hit unlock, it does the driver's door only. Hit it again, and it does all the passenger doors for security purposes. You can adjust the pulse trigger, so that way you can have a single, a double, or a triple trigger input, so that way if you want to use this, and instead of using the remote controls and you changed your mind, you want to use the factory remote, you can hit lock lock, or lock unlock lock, or lock lock lock, and program this module to remote start utilizing a factory transmitter and just omit these remotes altogether, just like that. So that's cool. Your remote start runtime, of course, you can set anywhere from 3 minutes to 15. The intervals are 3 minutes, 15 minutes, 25 minutes, and 45 minutes. This system is also auto and diesel transmission ready. This will not work on a manual, so do not use this on manual transmissions unless you know exactly what you're doing. Also, you can program this vehicle to start with a time or a temperature built into the system. And really, that's really it. I mean, there's some few other little programmable features, but I don't really see any point in talking about them because they're just pretty irrelevant for most cases. But the cs601s is a great little system. I mean, we sell a bunch of these things. If you need one, by all means, please give us the biz. Come to our site and pick one up from yourself. If you're going to use a bypass, definitely I'm going to recommend you use this brand. This is Fortin, and inside these Fortin bypasses, they give you a little card so that way you can actually log onto a site, and it gives you vehicle colors, locations, photographs, and the whole bit. It's a one-time code which you can go in there and get, you know, the installation guide, so that way you can take the manual from here, the wire that goes to the system, and then the wire side to the car, put the two together, and you can do all your connections basically outside the car, prepping it, putting it in, making your time go much more effortlessly. So there's a lot. This company offers a lot. Their features are good, their service is good, their warranty. I mean, what else can you ask for? So there you have it. This is cs601s.